Okay, I see us on TV over there, and I think my having to delay that allowed a couple more people to join us. So let's see. Sorry, it is now 5:16. And Ken Whitfield.
Here.
Okay, James Hairston. I see him down there. I see him on the screen, so I'm going to say yes. Mark Phelan.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Alan Hart. Ray Dotson. Not yet. Mark Terry.
Here.
And Todd Wolf.
Here.
Hi. Okay, and sorry. Oh, hold on. Let me check one thing. I think that's right. Sorry. And I think we have Ray Dotson now. Maybe. Yes, Ray. I see him on the screen, so I'm going to count him as here. We have Chief Mike Zorro. I saw him. Did we lose him? Does anybody else see him?
I'm right here.
Okay. And then Councilmember Mike Renstetter. I see him on the screen. I'm going with it. We have Assistant Fire Chief Scott Adams. Okay. And then I know that we have Chief Sharp with West Pierce Fire and Rescue as well. There we go. Hello, sir. And I have a couple of our guest speakers in here, but I'm going to pause on that and let them introduce themselves when it's their turn to speak. So I think that's everybody.
I'm here. I'm in the middle of an electronic blizzard.
Oh, yes, you are.
I'm trying to get the snow out of the way.
Okay. I think that's everybody. I think I'm done. Sorry if I missed anybody. Holler at me if I did.
Okay, thank you, Joanne. Appreciate that. I will assume that all of you have had a chance to review the minutes. Is there any discussion about the minutes and any changes?
Move to be accepted as distributed.
It has been moved, and by that's Mark.
Second.
And seconded by Alan to approve the minutes as written.
Group.
Okay, all in favor?
David.
Aye.
Aye.
Whatever. Okay, any opposition? Ayes have it. Minutes have been approved. At this time, we have a presentation about the city roundabouts and some pretty interesting discussions myself with people that are living in the area. But if you, let's see, it's Ted and Troy. If you please introduce yourselves and take it away. Appreciate it. Thanks for being here.
Not a problem. Thank you. Appreciate being invited. Ted Hill. I'm two months into working for the city. So I just wanted to be part of this and listen myself. And Troy Pokswinski is the gentleman who is been involved in the project manager for all the projects that I hear about that have all the roundabouts. So I'll let Troy take it from here.
Yeah, I'm Troy. I'm one of the civil engineers here at the city. I don't want to take credit for all the roundabout projects, that's for sure, as I did not do all of the roundabout projects in and around the city. I was not responsible for the veterans and not any part of the DOT, the latest projects that they have going on in Tillicum. I'm going to share my screen here real quick so we can pop up the presentation. Everybody can grab that. You should have it now. So the city's got a couple of projects that they're proposing to put some roundabouts. Some we already have installed roundabouts. One is just started turning ground on yesterday. And then we have a subsequent phase coming on it. We did install 3 roundabouts here last summer, one at the Lake City Boulevard Veterans Drive. We've got one at Vernon and Veterans, and then down at Dolly Madison, the park entrance and Veterans. They've got some roundabouts going in there. These are the 4th, 5th, and 6th roundabouts that the city has put in. The first one being obviously City Hall, the second one being Murray and 150th, and then down at Boundary in Portland is an additional one that we have had for quite some time now. So we've got a project also with that, the JBLM North Access Improvement Project, where we're proposing to put in 10 new roundabouts. We just started work down here at Nyanza yesterday, Nyanza Gravelly South. We have another roundabout proposed at Veterans and Gravelly, then also at Washington Gravelly, and Interlock and Washington will be the fourth one on this current phase. And then we have 6 additional ones to the west of there proposed under future phases. So that'll kind of round up what we have going on there. I'll dive into a little bit of the project background and then kind of explain why it is that, that kind of summarizes why we selected roundabouts for what we're doing for traffic control out there. And then we'll take some questions right at the end, because I know you guys have got some. So the background on how we ended up with this, we've had quite a bit of congestion in the Northgate Road, Edgewood area from some base expansion, as well as just the congestion on I-5 spilling over. You guys have all probably taken that route. If you haven't, it's a good route to take when the freeway gets, pretty backed up. Not a bad area through Silicon DuPont. So we started getting complaints in 2010. 2011 of a lot of congestion through there. So we started looking at it and saying, hey, we need to do something with this area. In addition, this is one of our high accident corridors throughout the city. I'll get into that a little bit. There are no non-motorized facilities as it sits today, and the condition of the existing infrastructure, we haven't touched anything out there prior to this Veterans Drive job since incorporation. So 25 years of it just sitting. So let's dive a little bit into their goals. We want to improve the safety and congestion throughout the corridor by installing traffic control, in this case, roundabouts. We're going to include some non-motorized to afford bikes and pedestrians safe spaces to travel in the Lake City neighborhood from Lake City to the city center, as well as points north and south along the I-5 packed highway corridor. And then we also need to update the physical condition of the motorized traveling service, resetting the clock 30 or 40 years for the pavement life, 60 in the intersection. We're doing concrete for the JVL North access project. So I pulled some accident history this is for Washington Boulevard alone for the years 2015 to 2019, a 5-year span for a grant that we had. I haven't pulled those recently, but we had 144 accidents on Washington Boulevard alone in that section. 49 injury collisions, 3 were pedestrian related, and 2 fatalities. So it's actually quite high compared to some of our other areas for that. Congestion in that area is becoming increasingly worse by the year. We're expected to see it rise 10% over the next 2 years. At that point, the level of service at some of the key intersections, Gravelly, Washington being one of the real key ones, Edgewood, Northgate's getting kind of bad. Even Edgewood, Washington's getting kind of bad. It starts to become a real problem in 2025 to 2030, depending on which simulation we're running and how much growth we're anticipating. As I mentioned before, the existing infrastructure condition, the pavement rating continues to deteriorate as we haven't touched it since incorporation, aside from some minor patching activities. We haven't touched anything. The majority of the storm conveyance out there has separation deficiencies, so we need to completely redo all of that. And I'll get into the existing non-motorized facilities. We do have in the top picture here, you'll see that's the Gravelly Washington intersection. To the north there, we've got that widened sidewalk on one side, which is a bike pedestrian area on the lake side, and then a regular sidewalk. This connects all the way up into the city hall area, into the downtown area. So that'll be nice to have something. But the bottom picture is what I really want to highlight here. It's on the left-hand side here, it's what we call a cattle path. And that's traditionally what we see on this corridor is just worn gravel, weeds are worn out from people walking so much. So people are really utilizing this quite a bit, but it doesn't have any safe spaces to walk. So really, this is what you guys are interested in. Why roundabouts? Specifically, we selected roundabouts because of the safety. The IIHS, the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, performed a study about 5-6 years ago, and they found that 37% reduction in overall collisions, a 75% reduction in injury collisions, and the fatal collisions are reduced to 10% of what they are when you replace a a signal or a stop sign with a roundabout. So we see a massive reduction, especially in the injury and the fatal collisions. And that's the primary reason why we selected roundabouts for these intersections. In addition, they also reduce congestion and maintain high levels of service through, well, we actually booted that out to 2040. So we don't see any backups through 2040 with our current models. They're also more economic. They're easier to construct. They cost less to maintain. They're more reliable. Power outages don't turn the things black. So we can, still move around without having to worry about black signals. And some people say they like the aesthetics better. I don't get much into the aesthetics, but other people like the aesthetics. So really, what about the emergency response vehicles coming through here? And response times for emergency vehicles traveling through the Washington Boulevard corridor from what they are today will vary a little bit. Will they be as fast at night when you're able to just clear sail down Washington Boulevard? No, they won't. But if you think about a PM peak time at Gravelly, Washington, where the backups are already exceeding, almost back into the interlocking intersection, trying to get an emergency vehicle through there in the PM and the AM peaks is really challenging. So there's some pluses and minuses. But what we really went to for engineering judgment on this is FHWA and the International Association of Firefighters got together and they made a little pamphlet or did a little study, and they said really the small differences in travel times rarely, if ever, impact the outcome of an incident, and the benefits of having the safety of reducing collisions and that's such a thing far outweigh the other case. So the other thing they came up with is the majority of fatal collisions with emergency response vehicles occur at or related to an intersection. So if somebody's got their flashers on and they're flying through, that's typically at an intersection where you see the collision. At least that's what they came up with. So at this time, I really do want to open the floor to any questions that you guys may have.
Yes.
Questions? Mark?
Yes. Hey, Troy, you mentioned does it allow a quicker throughfare regarding no signals or something? In response to that, and the question to that is, that's my concern. I live over here off of Brook Lane, and Brook Lane feeds onto Meadows, and there's a circle right here, a small one, for the intersection of Meadows and DeKoven. And I've come across more than once crossing DeKoven, I come up to that signal and people on DeKoven like to speed through that circle. Now I understand the circle, the reason why it's created really low and everything is because if you're towing a trailer or something, you can't basically negotiate around that circle if you have a trailer. But the problem is as if I'm on Meadows heading toward Brook, crossing DeKoven, off to my left is a little green patch area that basically blinds my sight to be able to look up the street because it's a curve too. And so people come around that corner and they come at it at a pretty good speed, more than the 20 mile per hour recommended speed. I'll guarantee you that. And I've almost had collisions where I've had to brake to basically just give way to them and stuff. So, and some of the, I guess younger group people that drive through there, it's almost like a challenge maybe or something to see how fast you can go through some of those circles. So is there any thought given to speed humps or something along that lines to basically tell, other than a sign to say slow it down? Because I cross that intersection every day multiple times, and it's a concern to me for sure.
So I had omitted when I started the presentation, I omitted those two on DeKoven intentionally. So not intentionally, somewhat intentionally. There are three different classifications of roundabouts. The first of which is the type we have out at Meadow or at DeKoven at Meadow, and I think it's at 100th. I can't even recall exactly the cross street on the second one. But those are traffic circles or compact roundabouts where we don't even have a splitter island. The radius is so small And on a lot of these in cities, they just literally put an island in the middle of the road that's traversable, and it's not really doing anything. It's there for the people who are, you know, are going to be honest with it, right? I've seen a lot of people, even if they're taking a left, they'll come up to it and go to the left side of it. I've even seen, you know, dump or garbage trucks do that. We've gone away from doing those. I don't think that even the manual says, unless you've got a real low volume road, at which point you're thinking, well, why am I even doing it if I've got this kind of a low volume road? We've gone away from doing the compact or the mini roundabouts or the traffic circles, excuse me. The second classification, they're like the ones we did out on Veterans Drive. And I don't know, Mark, if you've had a chance to drive out of Veterans Drive.
I haven't.
It's just a little bit bigger footprint. So the first footprint, the compact is what we call an inscribed diameter, is less than about 45 or 50 feet wide. It's just a circle that we plan in the middle of the intersection. From 50 to 80 feet, we can start adding what's called splitter islands that force you to, here I'll scroll down on this to one of ours. Probably that's actually got a decent looking one here. You can't see it real well because of the white, but it's an island right here that forces you to slow down and go this way. And we kind of chicane it a little bit in order to slow people down. So with those roundabouts, we have it. It's the circulating island is completely down because we don't have big enough for the trucks and trailers out on Veterans. The third type of roundabout that we're building on Gravelly and Washington have circulating islands. They're large enough for the trucks. So those are the ones that we really slow people down to 20 miles an hour. And these splitter islands force you to go all the way around. So it's a little different. I do want to say that, you know, we've learned some things and we've gone away from the DeKoven trap, and I apologize for it because ultimately it's not a good thing. It wasn't my project, full disclosure, but it's one of those things that it's not recommended anymore.
So I guess what's the recourse? Is it just going to stay there? And again, some of the problem is the vegetation in this little green area there. I don't know if it's just a designated green area, but the brush there kind of blinds you as you come up. And I've been driving 40 plus years, and it's concerning. And I'm teaching somebody to drive, and I kind of talk to her about how, you know, approaching this area, how to look at it, double look and everything. But it's a setup for an accident because people speeding on DeKoven. And I guess the second part to this is all these roundabouts going in and everything. I've driven to Europe and a lot of other countries, and I understand how to enter into a roundabout. But the education aspect of it too, because some people just kind of, like I said, come blowing in there like they've got the right of way versus the person that's in the roundabout has the right of way and stuff. So is there an education aspect to all this?
There is, and the various DOTs have put stuff up there. To answer your second question first, they've done a good job about it, and they're trying to get people to put this more so into the driver's eds type stuff. So moving forward, I've heard that anyway. I haven't gone through driver's ed like you probably for quite some time, but that's what I've heard them trying to get at. Other than that, they've just trying to been plugging them, you know, getting people to the DOT websites to learn how to drive them. I think as they become more and more common, and it's not just Lakewood that's getting them. I mean, Lacey's got a ton, Gig Harbor's got a ton, University Place has got a ton. They're becoming more and more popular. Hopefully people will start to learn on them. As for your first question, if it's a sight distance issue, that's something we can easily put into our 311. And we have a couple guys who that's what they do, is clear up sight distance problems as we go. I'll put that in. Is it Meadow and DeKoven, or which one is it?
Yeah, if I'm on Meadows heading to Brook, crossing DeKoven, I look to my left, like I'm looking towards the city, basic city center proper, and you would have a screening issue of the brush there, because again the road comes in at a curve. It's got vegetation there, so it really kind of limits your vision to look to your left And in the meantime, you got to turn back to the right, look, and then go back to your left to look again. And again, your vision's still screened. It's just, I mean, I've been around some of the other roundabouts too. They do not have the issue of, and I'm not trying to make this focused on me, but I'm just saying that I've been around town. I've been around some of the other roundabouts. They don't have the sight issue like this one does. So.
And I'll put that into our traffic guy who deals with the sight distance stuff, and he'll get it cut back. Is it that rain? I'm assuming it's that rain garden area that we have.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll take care of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? Troy, I do have, actually, Mark kind of already highlighted a couple of the questions that I wrote down, but I've had complaints from just from the neighbors about the size. How is it determined by the size of the roundabout? And I think Mark referenced that people with large RVs and stuff have a hard time maneuvering that. So how is it determined as to what size is being put in?
So for the Veterans Drive, we can go to a mini roundabout because of the ADT, the average daily trips, or the volume of the traffic on the road. We can go down to a mini roundabout. But what we look at is what's the biggest vehicle that we expect to come down that road. For veterans, we didn't size it for semi trucks or anything like that. We sized it for boat trailers and that type of thing, and that's why they're traversable. Although, to be honest with you, I'm not a huge fan of having a central island that you got it with a boat trailer that you got to go up over a curb on, mountable or not, because it's a pain in the neck. I get it. Again, full disclosure, not my design, not my deal. For Washington Boulevard, we put WB67s, which are the large semi trucks, is what we use for a design vehicle to get through there. So a trucker has the ability to get through each of the roundabouts on Washington and Gravelly for those ones. It's strictly driven by volume and the traffic volume and the design vehicle that we expect.
Okay. So where does the buck stop on those decisions? Just curious.
The city engineer.
Okay. Okay, and then I just wanted one last thing about education. I know you mentioned traffic educate or traffic, what do they call it now? Traffic ed, I forget what you call it. It's been a long time since I've been in it. But is there any other kind of public education that you're aware of in the city that is being, because I think that's also a challenge for some people.
Yeah, that's something we should look at. I don't know how that would be. That'd obviously be through our communications group and our public works as a joint, and maybe even our police department as a joint. We haven't ever looked at it because before these two projects, I mean, we've had pretty minimal roundabouts, right? I mean, the one in front of City Hall and the one down at Murray, it just kind of seems like they've been there. And the one out at Boundary in Portland are pretty, that one's out of the way. So we haven't had a whole need for it, but that might be something we need to look at. We do want to look at the amount of accidents that we get once we get these things rolling and see what the results are on it. I do know at Murray and 150th, the accidents did go down by 37%, the collisions, and we haven't had any injury. We had one injury from a motorcyclist losing it, and no fatalities since we put that one in 2012. So that one's been a success, at least what we can term as a success.
Well, maybe that's a topic that Council Member Brandstetter, is he still here? I don't see him. Anyway, for the council to maybe include in some sort of publications. I think for me, ultimately, I know that there is no perfect thing out there. There's, we're not going to, you sort of mitigate, trying to alleviate the most important issues. And, but it was really fascinating for me to learn, even prior to this meeting, what was the point of putting these in was not just to irritate people, but was to do, there's a lot of different things and a lot of reasons. And I'll tell you, there's many times that I've sat at a stoplight and nobody on either side, and I'm thinking, this would be nice to have a roundabout right here. So, but anyway, it'd be nice to see something like that in a public publication from the city that it's just saying things as to why these roundabouts are going in and what are the benefits. And it might help people just kind of get over the irritation of some of the things that go along with it. All right, any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, Ray.
Yes, sir, Ray.
Hey, how you doing? May I ask, I was down in University Place, longtime resident, on the, what was become the PSAC, when roundabouts were put out there on Grandview and a few others, which the first round was pretty disastrous. There wasn't enough reach out, or maybe they didn't think to ask some questions, and suddenly you have school buses can't make the turns, and I think that's probably been accommodated now. The fire equipment had difficulties, and I was wondering, several times it comes up, does the group at Lakewood talk to the similar group at UP or somewhere else, lessons learned and over the different fences? It just seems like we're always starting a new formula. It's like going into Iran after the hostages and collapsing because 6 different radio frequencies. Is that done? You guys have coffee once a month or something?
The directors of all the Pierce County agencies do get together once a quarter. We don't typically talk to other municipalities, though we did talk to a lot of, we had a consultant design these roundabouts in particular because there were so many of them. We wanted to make sure we got it right the first time. So we did have a consultant design these ones, a consultant that has designed many, not the University Place ones, but many in around Gig Harbor, many of the DOT ones down south as well. So we did do some outreach on it, but we wanted to make sure that we got the size right more than anything, so we didn't have the kind of problems that University Place had. I did hear about that before we started on this, so we want to make sure we did accommodate everything that we had for a design vehicle.
Well, it seems like if you got a competent consultant, that probably wraps that in for the most part. I have a second question on the newly striped Lakewood Drive. I know that's not a roundabout, but several of us think we feel like the optical illusion or the optical fact is that the curb lane is now smaller than the center lane going each direction to accommodate those new mid-lane turns. Is that just an optical illusion, or is there a measurable difference?
I haven't been out there. I did design that, so I can tell you that every lane is supposed to be the same width. I will go out there tomorrow and check that now, as that was just done yesterday. They striped that. I will go out there and look at that, and we'll check that for sure, especially now that you bring that to our attention. Every lane out there is supposed to be, there's 5 lanes, they're all supposed to be 11 feet wide. Well,
And they may be. It's just my eyes and a few others have said, gosh, it feels smaller, it looks smaller. It may not be, but I just thought I'd introduce that possibility. Thanks very much.
Thank you for the comment. Every once in a while, our stripers get a little off. I mean, it's tough to do that striping machine. I'm always impressed, but every once in a while they get a little off. So we'll go check that.
Thanks.
Thank you, Troy. Appreciate you being here. Unless there's any other questions. Great. Let's
Stop.
Is Councilmember Branstetter still here? I thought
I think I was been looking for him and I don't see him, and he's not, unless he pipes up that I'm just not seeing. He's not waiting to be let back in either. So
I thought I saw him, but that's okay.
He was here, but yeah, I don't know where he went.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, I'm sure he had some comments, especially about the the Clover Creek Rail Crossing. All right, well, we'll move on. Maybe he'll show back up. So fire department comments. Chief Adams, or who are we going to have speaking today?
Well, I think it's me, but let Scott tell me if it's me.
It is. Chief Sharp, you're up.
All right.
You are up, Chief. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for having me tonight. Yeah, they said that you guys would like a little presentation on our one of our newer resources that we've put in place out in Lakewood, and that's our new squad unit. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And I believe I can screen share here, I'm assuming. give me 2 seconds here to figure it out. It looks like I can. So, all right. Oops. Oh, there we go. I have 2 screens, so it keeps messing me up trying to figure out which screen to share here. I want to make sure I share the right one. Are you seeing the full screen that says West Pierce Fire and Rescue? Okay, Scott's giving me a thumbs up, so I think I've got it right here. I'll be short. I just have a few slides. I figured slides are better than staring at me, that's for sure. So I'll just kind of bounce through this a little bit. I want to talk about Squad 21, but to get there, we got to go back and actually talk about our EMS programs first. And that's kind of what led us to where we are today with our new Squad program. Back around 2015, we were starting to see this huge increase in call volume that continued over multiple years. It was really starting to tax our services, and the overwhelming majority of that call volume increase was all for emergency medical calls. But the reality is the majority of those calls were not for critical emergencies. They're actually, all that increase in call volume was for minor injuries and a lot of basic healthcare needs, or people that were just calling because they had other issues that they needed to be treated for that weren't necessarily critical medical issues. And so that was a trend, not just here locally, but that was nationwide. There was some changes in healthcare and some other things that were influencing that, but it was kind of a perfect storm, and fire departments across the country were seeing major increases in their EMS call volume. But again, it was all minor types of calls. The problem with that was all of our advanced life support transport units were getting really taxed. They were going to on all these EMS calls, and then when we had a high priority call, they'd be either unavailable because they were busy transporting a minor call, or they were out of position because they were covering in an area that wasn't their normal first due area. So we pulled a committee together to kind of analyze the problems, come up with some recommendations. And one of the things they recommended was changing our EMS response model. So that was the first step we took. And what we did is we changed our medical response model, and instead of sending an advanced life support paramedic unit to all of these low acuity calls, we stopped doing that and just sent the fire engine to those calls. They're all trained emergency medical technicians on our fire engines. They've got medical equipment to handle minor emergencies and minor calls. So for the basic stuff, we started just sending an engine company and left the transport units back at the station. That worked really well for us. That almost overnight solved our EMS capacity problem, in that our medic units were available for the priority calls. They were in position for the priority calls. So great, that solved that problem. The problem was, while ALS became more reliable, our fire resources became more stretched, and they were going on a lot more calls than previously. And so now we had a problem where we had fire engines that were either dedicated to a call that probably wasn't a top priority, or they were out of position because they were covering a call. So we needed to figure out how to add some fire resources that would provide us the right balance in our system. And so again, I turned to the committee for some recommendations, and they did analyze some options, and what they came back with was a recommendation for a squad to, rather than adding another fire engine to the fleet and say, well, let's just put another fire engine on, that'll solve the problem. You know, if you've got more fire engines, they can go on more calls. They recommended actually a squad, which is a small vehicle which carries, can run in place of a fire engine, carries all the equipment that EMS equipment, the firefighting PPE that the firefighters on the squad require, but it doesn't carry the ladders, the hoses, or the water, or those things that you would normally associate with the fire engine. So firefighting capable equipment for the personnel, EMS equipment for the personnel, and that's about it. So able to do it with a small vehicle. So that was the recommendation, and in January of last year, we started a pilot program, and I use this photo here. This actually isn't our squad, but it's identical to the unit that our squad is. So this is a good picture just to give you some frame of reference. For all these low acuity calls, you call for, people would call and say, hey, I've got a smoke detector it just keeps chirping. I don't smell fire. I don't smell smoke. But I can't figure out what's wrong with my smoke detector. We put 3 firefighters on that big fire engine to the left there, and they drive out there to see what's wrong with that smoke detector. And that was just the way we were doing business. Or if someone had maybe a sprained ankle and they were stable, but they had a sprained ankle, again, we'd load up 3 firefighters in the fire engine and send them off to handle that incident. Now we had a resource that could do the same thing, but do it a lot easier in a smaller vehicle. It's more appropriate sized and only has 2 personnel rather than 3. So we ran a pilot program for a year. We found that it was a fantastic program. Almost overnight, just saw immediate success with it. That it was a very versatile piece of equipment. Could handle all kinds of calls, EMS calls, could assist on fire calls, show up at a fire, be utilized in a lot of different ways because they were an extra resource. They could be attached to another company that needed help, so they could fit in a lot of different ways in that jigsaw puzzle of fighting a fire. So it became a permanent asset on January of this year. It's so essentially what we're doing is we're, instead of responding that $1.2 million ladder company, which is our largest vehicle in our fleet out of Station 22 or 21 on Silicon Boulevard, instead of running that $1.2 million ladder company out, we're now running a vehicle that's about $80,000 fully equipped. It runs with 2 firefighters, whereas a normal fire engine or ladder company would be staffed with 3. And the biggest shift is it's one of our, well, actually it's our only 12-hour resource. Typically in the fire service, we think in the mindset of 24/7 service, and so the concept is always add another 24-hour resource. We realize that the vast majority of our calls happen during certain peak hours of the day. And we didn't necessarily need an additional resource at night, but we did need that extra resource during the day to help balance our call loading. So it only runs for 12 hours a day, but it's on 7 days a week during our peak hours. So rather than putting a fire engine on and just adding an extra fire engine like we would, I guess, say typically do, by adding only a 12-hour resource with only 2 personnel, it lowers the total operating cost from a labor perspective down about 65% less expensive than running a fire engine 24 hours a day. So the concept behind it was try to get the right type of vehicle, get the right size vehicle, put it in service at the right time during the day so that it's maximizing efficiencies. And it's turned out to be a really well-received program that's working really well for us. It's helped balance our EMS call loading. It's helped balance our fire response and keep both our medic units and our fire apparatus in position and available for the critical calls. We have 1 in service right now. It was part of the funding package that was incorporated into our operations levy that was passed a year ago. We have also built into that the funding to staff a second 12-hour vehicle next year. And so we're analyzing our needs to determine if that'll be another squad or maybe a 12-hour medic unit. We're looking to see where the best efficiencies would be made. And so right now we're sort of leaning towards the idea that a second squad would be the way to go rather than another medic unit, because our medic units have become so efficient now with some of the changes that we've made already. So with that's a real brief high-level overview of what our Squad 21 program is and what it looks like. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. I'm sure there's probably more questions that I didn't cover in that. That's just kind of the high points, if you will. And if I can figure out how to stop my screen share, I'll do that. There it is. I use all different platforms, it's WebEx or Zoom or Microsoft Teams, and all the buttons are in different places. So I always have to figure it out each time.
Yeah, I have a question.
You bet.
Did you add 2 people to man that vehicle, or did you scrounge them from someplace else?
No, we added them. As I said, that was part of the proposal that was part of our operations levy that we were funding over 4 years. We put that on the ballot measure. And as part of that ballot measure, there was enough funding placed in there for us to add additional firefighters to support that as an additional resource, not to take personnel off other vehicles that were already in service. So it's a new and additional resource in the community that we didn't have previously.
So you'd add a second squad to another part of the district to serve more people?
That's the consideration. There's enough funding to do one more 12-hour two-person vehicle. So it won't be a fire engine. As I said, those are typically 24 hours a day, three-person vehicle. So it's a 12-hour two-person vehicle. And so it's either going to be a 12-hour peak hour medic unit or a 12-hour squad, and it would be placed in the north end of our district in the University Place station. Part of that is the science of call loading and trying to get the right vehicles in the right place, and part of that is the not so scientific struggle that we always battle with having enough room in a station that'll actually the apparatus will fit in. And so right now we're looking to place that apparatus in our University Place station, but that'll be next year when that happens.
And one last question before I turn the floor over to Mark. Did you include the savings in maintenance on the sending a full engine?
I'm sorry, did we include the savings in maintenance?
Yeah, running a full engine is on a call is fairly expensive, whereas that smaller squad is probably a lot cheaper, lower maintenance. So with less runs on your engine, your maintenance costs, I would think, would go down.
That absolutely is part of the goal for sure. We recognize that our ladder company, for example, again, that's Station 21. That's our largest vehicle, and that's right now where the squad is housed, is at Station 21. And it's a bit of a unique vehicle. All of our fire stations have a response zone that's their home response area. The squad, while it's in Station 21, it actually has a response area that covers Station 21 and Station 20, which is our Pacific Highway station. So it covers a much larger area. So it covers for both of those apparatus. But as an example, the ladder company gets about 2 miles to the gallon every time we drive it out of there. While that pickup truck fully loaded is not the most efficient vehicle from a gas perspective, it gets a lot more than 2 miles to the gallon. Tires were something that we replaced tires on that ladder company twice a year just because of the wear and tear on those tires. So absolutely, we anticipate wear and tear costs, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but to get a set of tires on that thing is 5 figures. I know that it's a very expensive and costly effort just on the tires alone. So wear and tear, tires, fuel, all of those costs, we anticipate to see a pretty healthy savings on that. But I don't have any of those numbers yet because it's only been a pilot program for 1 year, and we were doing some tweaking during that time. This year we'll have a more accurate reading on how much it's sort of kept that vehicle off the road, if you will.
Thank you.
Mark, go ahead.
Alan asked my question.
Oh, good.
Sorry, Mark.
Great minds.
Any other questions?
Yeah,
Chief Sharp. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, hey, Chief Sharp, I just want to commend you guys for the flexibility there. Definitely bringing a different resource there that the return on investment, I'm sure, pays out there regarding that the capability you're pushing out there. And just one other item, have you guys thought about having like a TV show like, Squad 21 or something similar?
We haven't, not yet. I don't feel like we could live up to the acclaim of Squad 51, and so.
Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Ray.
Hey, Chief, good to see you. I have the pulse point on my smartphone, and I saw that since midnight last night, there were 47 calls, 33 were medical emergencies. The Squad 21 was only utilizing 1. Does that reflect the schedule that Squad 21 is available for, or some differentiation between what's a medical emergency?
No, it's most likely, well, it could be a little bit about the scheduling, of course. If the calls come in after that resource is off the road, then it wouldn't respond. But a lot of it has to do with the types of calls too. It's not set up to be an advanced life support vehicle, and it's not a primary fire vehicle. So if there's a fire call or it's an advanced life support call and it's first due response zone, it wouldn't respond to those. And so it really depends on probably three factors. Where did those calls happen? Were they in the response zone for Squad 21? What types of calls were they the right type of call that it would normally be dispatched on? And then what time of day did they happen? Were they after hours when it happens? I would say that's pretty unusual that it's only dispatched on one call. And I will say too, I'm not sure how that app works exactly, but a lot of times Squad 21 is a pretty unique vehicle in our fleet in that it's very flexible in the way it operates. So it will actually jump a lot of calls that it may not initially be dispatched on, but if it's available and it's in an area that it can take that call, it'll go ahead and go on the call and cancel the engine that's been dispatched to it initially. So sometimes there may be some calls that it actually went to that may not show up on that. I'm just not clear exactly on how much that app accounts for response changes after the initial dispatch.
Okay, and probably whoever takes the dispatch call probably does some discrimination in making that analysis of what's needed.
Yeah, the dispatchers work off a set of what we call run cards, and they're clearly defined based on location and type of emergency, exactly what kind of vehicle, which vehicle is supposed to get dispatched and in what order and hierarchy. So it's very specific about what they send, and it's based on location, time, and type of call.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate the presentation. We're moving on to, well, do we have youth council here tonight, Joanna? Okay. If you don't mind, if we bump you, Chief Zarro, I see that Councilmember Brandstetter is back with us. If we
I
could
defer to the council member.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm hoping that you can hear me because I have been having connection problems and been in and out of this to do that. But you know, the most important thing I think that for the council to look at is that first of all, the legislative session ended, and there was quite a bit of activity around public safety. That I hope you all got the summary from our lobbyists that covered those, and had a chance to look at that public safety list of legislative items that took place. Some of them aren't real impactful on Lakewood because they're requiring everybody to do things we already were. Others we've got to take a look at as to how we're going to implement. Most of them were things that the city supported. There are a few things that are there, and that the chief is going to have to look at how to implement those, and it's a little bit too soon to actually have all of that down pat to do that. Additionally, we're positioned to get some COVID relief dollars from the federal package, and we're working through what all we're going to do with those, because there is money that's coming to the city, but also went to the county and to the state. We're trying to make sure that we don't duplicate and spend our money on things that our residents have access to from the county level or from the state level. And it comes in two packages, one in this year and then another a year from now. So we're really working through that to see what's going on. But other than that, I think that there's I'm not sure what all I missed in the meeting, but there's not a lot of new public safety actions that the council is specifically taking. We're more or less continuing with what has been working for us to be able to go and do that, and seeing what requests we get from the chief. So that's really all I have. However, I'm willing to answer any questions, dispel any rumors.
Thank you, Councilmember Branstetter. Any questions for Mike? Okay, thank you. Chief Zorro, you are up.
All right. Well, after coming back from a little bit of an extended vacation, I'm still trying to go through a lot of the new legislative stuff. I know Councilmember Branstetter described it as public safety legislation, but it is policing legislation is how I would characterize it. I think safely say that nobody was made safer by the legislation that was passed. It's just focused on different policing or different methods of policing and changing some laws that will likely no longer be enforced or things like that. I am still going through that to try and get a clear picture of what the operational impact is going to be, so I can give our officers some clear direction. That and trying to manage the morale with the year-long public beat down by every person with a microphone, followed by a legislative session that did little to take into account, what the work is that officers actually do. It's been a little tough for our officers. So we actually celebrated one retirement today, and I've got 4 more in the next month coming up. And that was only one of those 5 were expected. The other 4 were announced within the last 2 months. So we are going to have some serious personnel issues coming up that I'm also going to have to address. But all of that, in a nutshell, is what I'm working on. But I need to still kind of get my bearings after being gone and get into the details of it. I can present some of that to you. The one other task or thing that we talked about discussing tonight was the fireworks ordinance change that doesn't go into effect till next year. But one of the things I asked was that you all kind of start thinking about what good ways of public notice would be for the change in laws this year. And just as a reminder, we want to do a big education blitz this year, even though the laws don't go into effect next year, just to get people noticed and ready for what is going to happen next year. And a reminder, all it is no fireworks on the 3rd and 5th. They're only going to be allowed on the 4th. So some of the things that I had in mind were social media notices, sending out paper notices, and actually being out on the 3rd and the 5th, having officers out just to go around and tell people who are lighting off fireworks and say, hey, I know you've been allowed to do this on the 3rd and 5th, forever, but next year there's a change in law. So you need to be prepared for that. And short of that, I'm not sure what else we can do to do effective notification. But for this group, any ideas that you had on that topic would be welcome.
I may add just real quick, Chief Zorro, that I think we talked about requiring any of the vendors to have some sort of notice that goes with the sales of any of the fireworks in the city.
Oh, that's a great idea.
They're going to have the 25th anniversary celebration on the plaza. Be a good time to have a booth or something with some information on it.
Well, wait a minute. Well, that's going to be in September, but still a good time to,
Yeah, September, I believe.
Yeah, maybe there, or the farmers markets too would be a good time. All right, you guys are full of great ideas.
Is there a, what's the publication now? I'm drawing a blank.
Connections.
Sorry?
Oh, the Lakewood Connections.
Yes, the connections, would imagine some sort of full page ad or something that might be useful.
Yeah, it just went out with a little, I mean, this quarter's already gone out with a little statement about it in one section. Next year, we'll highlight it more. We'll do something bigger for it because it does go out right before, because it's quarterly. So it'll go out, you know, right before the 4th. So that'll be a good time next year for that.
Perfect. Okay. Any other questions for Chief Zorro? Okay, thank you, Chief. Appreciate it.
All right.
Yeah, I have.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Alan.
I have a couple about the attachment on your year-end statistics. Are you prepared to talk about those?
Sure.
Okay. Let's see. Use of force as percent of arrests. Fourth quarter was 0.07%. Then the next line is use of force as percent of calls for service, 0.22%, like 3 times higher. And I don't understand how that can be with a much larger denominator, larger number of calls for service.
No, that must have been a misplaced decimal point on the percent of arrests. The percent of arrests that require use of force is been consistently around 5%. So what number did you just read?
All 4 of them were, their target was 0.03%, and quarter 1 was 0.04%, and quarter 2 0.09%. All of them were, the 100th of a percent. That's kind of surprised me. Unless he shouldn't have put in the percent sign or something.
Yeah, that's a misplaced decimal point or just an error in designation, because like I said, over the years, the percent of arrests is requiring use of force is consistently about 5%. The percent of overall calls for service requiring use of force is like 0.02%. That would be accurate, but no, that's a misplaced decimal point.
Okay. The next question I have is the number of minutes to respond to calls for service. All of the numbers are roughly 19 minutes, and that is a total of average time from receipt of the call to dispatch, and then average time from dispatch to arrival on site. I don't understand those numbers. It takes, the call comes in and it takes 2.5 to 3 minutes for dispatch to let you know about it.
They could. I mean, if all officers are already assigned to calls, they don't just broadcast it unless it's a priority. So if all the on-duty officers are already assigned to, say, a domestic or a handful of different calls, and a burglary call comes in where there's no suspect on site, that call, the dispatch won't say anything. It'll just sit there in the queue on the computer until an officer is available, and then they'll dispatch an officer.
Okay. Well, another question is on criminal investigations. You have cases assigned, cases cleared, etc. And then you have numbers for first quarter, second quarter, fourth quarter, but then you have an N/A, which I assume is not applicable for third quarter. Did something happen in the third quarter that you closed down investigations?
No, not yet. No, that was, and these are the So just to clarify that for everybody that we're talking the same thing, this wasn't the year-end report. These are the quarterly performance measures. And this was the end of the fourth quarter. The third quarter, I'm going to guess that just did not get filled out because the number, there's no reason that it would not have been applicable.
Okay. Last question then is, how do you set your targets?
By field.
You didn't make a lot of them.
Really, and it's by field. It's just generally for our performance measures, we identified things that might, might mean something, and looked at the measures that are, kind of past performance to see what might be indicative of future performance, and use that to kind of guess at a number, really.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. And let's see here. We don't have.
Does Mark have a question?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hey, Chief, just a quick comment. I just want to say, I know you guys have been taking a beating in the media and everything. I'm sure the rest of the committee would feel the same way. Express our thank you and to you guys and your support and your duty out there. We know it's not easy, but we just want to express our thank you to you. Continue to protect and serve the community here. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, gentlemen. I appreciate it.
Chief, could I ask you a question? Trey, I see the Law Enforcement Recruitment House Bill 1001 provides for applications for grants to increase broader diversity of candidates. Given the losses imminent and coming, do you think the department will be able to put together a request for such funding?
Well, we can. I don't know what that would mean. I mean, for that, we would need to come up to be responsible. I wouldn't ask for money and not know what I was going to do with it. So the first thing I would want to do is come up with a plan on what I would need money for, that we would reasonably expect would result in an increased pool of diverse candidates. And that's the first thing we have to explore. And that's been a tough nut to crack for a very long time. So, and not just in policing, but in all, right, a lot of different professions out there. So that's something I'd certainly be open to applying for that, but I wouldn't do it without knowing what I would want to do with that money that would be effective. Because I just being responsible for the taxpayers' dollars, I couldn't do that.
Right. And I would hope nobody that gets the award would be without that reasonable prediction. But maybe between now and late in the year, you can still pull it off somehow, or somebody can offer some ideas.
Well, and there hasn't been, and it's not like we haven't thought about it. And there has not been an idea that we've come up with and said, well, if only we had some money or some funding, we could really do more. There just hasn't been that. So, maybe there's some brighter minds out there than mine that can come up with something, and I've got no problem copying other departments if they come up with a good solution, but that's where we're at for now.
I would heavily advertise amongst the Seattle Police Department.
Yeah, and Tacoma.
And Tacoma, yeah, but Seattle lost 300 officers past few months.
Right.
So I imagine you're swamped with letters and applications from them.
Now we've got a few.
Yeah.
So, Chief Zorro, I do have a couple of comments or questions. You said there's 5 retirements, 4 were unexpected. Is there any other officers who have just said, we don't want to do this anymore and walked away?
Not that have quit. I mean, there's officers that have said this just isn't fun anymore. And that's, they're really, they just want to do the right thing. And that's what they constantly try to do, is the right thing by the people in Lakewood. And, and they're no different than officers anywhere else. And they're having a hard time dealing with the constant barrage of criticism and the false assumptions about what they do. Our state lawmakers, they passed a lot of legislation that was not based in any real understanding of what our officers do. So if they're told, if these state lawmakers come out and say, that here's what the officers are doing wrong, and the officers are saying, well, we're not doing that, and the lawmakers aren't listening to that anyways, then that's a little tough to take and a little tough to feel like the work you do is appreciated. So there are officers that have said it's not fun anymore, and they're just trying to figure out what the right thing to do is. But other than those 5, none have quit. But it really would not surprise me if we see more in the coming months. We already, I'm sorry to cut you off, Ken, but we already expected it in about 4 years, because we knew a lot of officers were going to be reaching retirement age. And so a lot of them are close anyways to retirement age. And, the environment's just kind of pushing them over the edge to leave a little sooner.
And then I have one other question about, by the way, I recommend to all the, did we lose? Oh, we lost somebody. I recommend to all the members to read through the provided legislative topics that Councilmember Branstetter provided. It's pretty interesting stuff. But Chief Zara, I just have a quick question about qualified immunity, and maybe you can explain what that is. Because I think a lot of people may not understand what that is. And there was specific legislation that I think I saw regarding that. So can you explain that?
Right. So qualified immunity applies in civil trials where federal trials, where say an officer does something and gets sued in federal court. One of the defenses can be that they were working in the full scope of their duties and should therefore be afforded qualified immunity, and they didn't violate any clearly established constitutional law. So they should be afforded qualified immunity, which means they're individually immune from civil liability, but their employer would still be on the hook. It's something that it's never automatic. It always has to be granted by a judge. And my understanding is that it is rarely granted. So in most cases, officers don't have a qualified immunity in trial. It's just a tool that's out there that we can use to help provide some civil liability protection. It's not applied very often, and it's that's kind of what it is. But the new legislation. And that's one, I didn't read the details on that yet, but look to strip that away. And the way it was portrayed is that all these officers are getting off scot-free because they're getting this qualified immunity, which is another one of the false assumptions that our state lawmakers operated under in order to make their voting base feel better while they pass this legislation. But that's what qualified immunity is. There's other states that have eliminated it as well. Not to rant too much, but one of the things that strikes me is that our lawmakers have no problem waiving all liability for people that have forever to make decisions, like themselves and judges, and the governor's pet projects with the independent investigation teams. But for the people that have seconds to make decisions, like police officers, they want to hold them to the strictest liability and not give them any protections at all. So that's part of the frustration that I have. I'm sure is clearly showing, but that's where the qualified immunity comes in. But quite frankly, Ken, they changed that law, and it's not really going to affect that much because like I said, my understanding is it wasn't granted that often anyways.
Okay, thank you for that.
Okay, I have
Go ahead,
if I may. Do you feel that the citizens of the city of Lakewood are not supporting or appreciating our police? Or is it mainly the state?
No, that's not it at all. And when I talk to our officers about some of the legislative session and some of their frustrations. And we talk about how, the people of Lakewood have vocalized their support, our council, our city manager have vocalized their support. That is genuinely appreciated. But what they point out is the problem is that it's out of even your hands. All the condemnation and everything else is coming from the state level and from the federal level. And, it makes for the popular media clip, but it's not, it kind of overrides the support that we're given, that we enjoy from the council and from our community. But it is still definitely appreciated.
If it's any consolation, probably not. But from my perspective, from Lakeview Light and Power, my perception is our state legislatures really don't give a damn about the problems of the power companies either. They kicked us around quite a bit too.
Yeah,
so
they've taken a very adversarial approach to local municipalities and utilities.
Very, very, very negative, not listening, and that includes the governor's office. None of them don't seem to be listening.
Right.
Okay, thank you, Chief Zorro. We'll move on. Appreciate that. And we really do appreciate the work that law enforcement does in the community. And we hope you guys stick with it, and maybe the pendulum will swing back the other way, and we can get on with some good business. So anyway.
Thanks, Ken.
My pleasure. No, we don't have youth council present, but we have unfinished business. I do note that the Clover Creek Rail Crossing is also on our August 4th work plan as topics. We could, just for the sake of time, defer that to August, or if you have a quick update, Mike, we could entertain that now.
Well, I will say that we're scheduled this coming week when we revise the 6-year tip to include the upgrade to that, not just the crossing, but from the 2 intersections on each side. And part of that is the continued interest in it from this group, and finally some acknowledgement from Sound Transit that what they did previously was inadequate, and that they're anticipating having some funding that can extend to being mixed with city funding to actually do that. Probably a 2022, 2023 project. But it's, I think that there's actually going to be some movement on that to get going, particularly given that this week the crew training for rail crews has been ongoing, and there have been trains moving at speed up and down that track from time to time to be able to go and do that, which seems to indicate that Amtrak service may well be something that begins to use that line in the fall. What they have been saying is that they'll either start it by November or wait till January, but they won't start it in December because of that just being a bad time to do new initiatives for them. So I think we're close to actually getting both the pedestrian crossings there, but not just that, but the sidewalks for the block leading up to that, and for the distance from the rail line out to Pacific Highway.
Thank you, Councilman Brandstetter. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that Mr. Hairston's constant or consistent, I should say, pressure on this has been very helpful. So thank you for that. And I think just this council or this committee's approach to not letting that die has given it new life. So good job.
I think it certainly kept it alive.
Yes, right. Very good. So I think we can be happy about that, James. Okay. Any other comments about that, or we can save some of that for the next meeting? So, okay. The last thing under unfinished business is the dashboard recommendation and review, and I'll just give you the highlights of what I asked for information. Let me back up. The city council asked for our input on the dashboard, and so as it relates to public safety, and so we asked the committee to go in and review the public safety objectives, and then if there was any thoughts, concerns, questions, or whatever, to submit them. And so we had several submissions, and I took the liberty of asking further questions and then doing my best to sort of whittle down what should go in this report to the city, so to the council, excuse me. So if you have had a chance, I hope you've had a chance to kind of read through that. If there was anything that needed to be omitted or was not submitted in your comments, that should have been sort of let us know earlier. But what we're really looking for right now is just an approval for this document to be sent forwarded to the council.
And there's a typo under satisfaction of police service. Third line up from the bottom of that says for should be FOUR.
I'm sorry, can you tell me where that is again? Or
satisfaction of police services. The last line in that section, go up to the third one. It says for FOR years, it should be FOUR.
Yes, okay. There was a typo. I think that was Joanna that did that. I'm not sure, but I'm just kidding.
It's amazing. I don't ever catch typos. I can't believe I did.
You just threw me under that bus.
I know.
I think I heard it back up too.
Small bus.
It looked like Ken's handwriting.
It is. It does look like my handwriting. Yes. Thank you very much. Okay, that's great. So I got a typo there. I can resubmit that, fixing the typo. Any other comments?
I move you submit it. It looks like a good report.
Okay, Marcus moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Alan. Is there any discussion or further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of submitting this report as is with a typo change, give us a thumbs up or whatever. Thank you. Thank you. And aye is good too. Any opposed? Great. The ayes have it. We will submit that with that change. So thank you for that. Okay. What's next here? Whoops. Sorry. Darn it. Okay. What is new business for next meeting is August 4th. What we have on our work plan is this discussion of Clover Park crossing and updates. I'm not sure exactly what else we can say, but maybe there will be more further updates by that time, next couple of months.
Well, I would hope that we might have a better picture of the timeline of when some actual capital work will be done.
Okay, perfect. And I might ask real quick, Joanna, are we kind of anticipating that the August 4th meeting will be in person? Do you think? Do we know?
I think that is a fabulous question for the chief.
I think odds are better than 50-50 that we will be able to meet in person.
Yep. The city council is planning to begin to meet in person with starting with our meetings in July.
Okay, that sounds like the question I guess I would have is if there's anybody that's uncomfortable at this point meeting in August in person, would we need to some sort of kind of vote or to say we'll just stay online for this fourth meeting, August 4th, and then meet in October? Or do we need to do anything official about that, Chief or Joanna or Mike?
I think so long as you all agree on the meeting, on whether it's in person or online, that's one thing, but the public notice is the critical part, and providing enough notice for the public to know where to come for the meeting if it is in person.
Okay, can we take a kind of an informal poll at this point? And if you're not, how do I say it? If you're not afraid or concerned about either way, if we decide to meet in person on August 4th, is anybody opposed to that? Good. Okay. I have no opposition whatsoever, so we'll sort of go with that for the moment and see what happens. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions about that? Great. Reports from board and members, staff community outreach reports. Do we have any?
Community outreach, the North Lakewood Neighborhood Association met. City Manager John Caulfield kind of gave us the same update that we've just got with the legislative report and kind of what was going on in the city. And they had a discussion, and they're going to vote on it at our next meeting about the little free pantry in the Oak Brook area or in the North Lakewood Neighborhood Association. Other than that, there was some information about new businesses coming to Lakewood. One of them, I think it's Arco Precision. 800 jobs, average wages is $70K a year. And there's going to be another Amazon fulfillment center. And I think that was about it. There was only about 10 or 12 people at the Zoom meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any other reports? Any policy or ordinance changes? No.
I have one.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Hairston.
I just had one correction. I was sleeping while we were talking about the topics, but back for the August 4th topic, the rail station Clover Creek crossing updates versus Clover Park crossings. It's just a correction.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I guess that I would say the committee has a history of being active at Summerfest, which is not going to take place this year. But there is an event in mid-September. It's going to be at the plaza in the Colonial Center to celebrate the 25th anniversary of the city. So at your next meeting, the committee may want to decide whether they want to have a presence there and do something, even if it might only be something to launch something about the changes in fireworks, or do something more festive. But you might discuss that at your August meeting as to, is there something you want to do in lieu of Summerfest this year?
Thank you, Councilmember Brandstetter. You could make just a note of that, Joanna, that'd be great. We can maybe add that. That's a great idea. All right, is there anything else? All right, thanks everyone. Appreciate you being here. Enjoy the rest of the evening and the beautiful weather. And we will. Whoops, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. We need a motion to adjourn. Thank you.
I so move to.
Thanks, Mark.
I'll skip that.
I don't want to adjourn.
Oh, no.
Good point. So we had Mark moved. Who seconded?
I seconded.
Alan. Okay. So we are adjourned. Thank you very much. Is that right? Or no, I'm sorry. We got a vote, right? Everybody approving? I'm ready to go, obviously.
I approve.
Okay. Any opposed to us closing this thing? Okay, great.
Just you.
Thank you guys. We'll see you all later. Bye-bye.